I'm Coach Seb, and this is Running New Mexico. All right, joining me today, I have Chuck Aragon. He is from Los Lunas. He graduated from Notre Dame, ran for them. The first New Mexican, first Notre Dame to run sub 4 minutes in the mile. And so much more. I mean, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome, Seb. I look forward to it.
Awesome. So my first question is, how did you get into running?
I think like everybody else in Los Lunas, you wanted to just be around with your friends, and that's kind of what I did. My friends were going out for track, and I knew that if I went home too early, my dad would make me cut weeds. So I decided to go hang out with my buddies and run track. I mean, I was really a baseball player, but we didn't have a baseball team in junior high, so I went out for the track team and enjoyed it. I mean, I wasn't anything special. I just kind of was somebody that was out there running and started to have some success with it probably my freshman year. And that's kind of when I decided, actually a coach decided for me, Ernest Sutherland, who was one of the track coaches, told me that he had seen me play baseball and I was a pretty good baseball player. He said, but son, you could be an excellent track man. He was a Texan and he had that Texas attitude. Son, you could be an excellent track man. So I adhered to his words and I continued with it. I had to choose between baseball and track at that time. So I decided to go with track, and I was glad I did. It's been a wonderful sport for me. Lots of great memories and lots of friendships, and then even instilling in my daughters the love of it. So it's been fun.
Yeah, well, that's pretty amazing. There's a lot of kids now that, they want to follow their passion. It's a little bit harder to just listen to a coach say, no, this is what you're true. This is what you're going to be really good at.
Well, I did enjoy it, but like I said, I think it was his assessment of things that made me realize that he was very honest with me and said that this really could be something that you could get an education from, get a scholarship, that sort of thing, and growing up in Los Lunas, that was important to me to be able to pay for my own education um, and really just enjoy the sport.
And what did your parents think of running at that time?
My parents were very, they were very supportive, but not, they didn't push me in any direction. I mean, it was just, it was whatever I wanted to do. And, they just wanted me to be a good kid, happy, that sort of thing. And it wasn't I really felt no influence from my parents in regards to what sport I should play, nor, really any pressure at all. So I think any pressure that I put on myself for success was self-generated.
That's good. That's great. And did you do cross country as well to, in the fall to build on that track seasons?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I think all of us did, and that was a real important part of the training. You couldn't expect to run with Andy Martinez and Gary Lewis in track if you didn't run with them in cross country. I mean, those guys, they set the bar pretty high. So it was a type of situation that if you wanted to compete in the spring, you had to you had to run cross country. I also played basketball, and I loved basketball, and I continued to play basketball throughout my high school career. But again, I wasn't very good. I was good enough to make the team and play some, but it wasn't a passion like track and field was for me.
When did you realize that you were good enough to kind of go on to that next level and get a scholarship to go run someplace?
I think the first time that I really kind of understood that I had a future in track was my freshman year. I ran against Orlando Woolridge. That's a name from the past. He was one of the most dominant 800 meter runners. He was from Bernalillo, had the state record. I remember the race was in Hobbs, and I got second to him. I ran like 159, I don't know, 159.9 probably as a freshman. And I think people were shocked by that, and I was too. That I was just hoping to finish the race, and I was ended up being second. So, and I think Orlando came up to me and kind of gave me some encouragement in regards to, track and field and my future in it, and that was really kind of the springboard that got me looking to cross country the next season, and then following up. I mean, I had a lot of great mentors. Clovis Romero. Coach Becerra, Rick Becerra, in high school, and also my brother. My brother was coached me in cross country my senior year, and so they were all very influential in kind of directing me and allowing me to see that I had a future in the sport.
That's really interesting. What was that like being coached by your brother, even for just a
it was
year?
pretty interesting. It was because our cross country coach had retired, Clovis Romero, and we didn't have a coach. So my brother said, "Yeah, I'll do it." So I don't know if I'm sure this is common knowledge by now, but I mean, he would call me the day before and say, "What do you think we should do tomorrow?" And I would I would come up with some workouts, based on the knowledge I had from running with Clovis Romero, and really would make them harder. He'd add stuff to them. But we really couldn't complain because he actually ran with us, in those. I mean, he'd do all the workouts with us, and so it was hard to complain if he was doing them. And I don't know. It's track and field, cross country. It doesn't matter what you do. It's just like you just got to work hard. I mean, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, and I don't think there's any special way to do it. But if you're stressing yourself and recovering, that's really the key to it.
Right, right. Well, and I think I just can't imagine it, back then. Like now, anybody who's interested, anybody wants to know, like you said, there's so many different ways to do it, but you type it in and you got Runner World's articles and articles from different coaches. You got all these different resources, and back then it's based, really on whatever you've learned from other people. The internet wasn't, a thing.
Yeah,
I know
no, it was clearly word of mouth and really what worked. And you knew when you were doing a good workout. You didn't need Runner World to tell you, man. You knew that you knew that when you were doing a good hard workout, and that's really what was our guide is how we weren't into the heart rate and all this other stuff. It
right.
was just a matter of when your tongue was hanging out, you probably did a pretty good workout. That was kind of. So
that is a good measurement.
yeah, yeah.
um, you know, I know you've probably talked about this a little bit before, but how'd you make the decision to go to Notre Dame?
Oh, that was really a fun thing. I thought I was going to go when I ended up running pretty fast at a UNM Twilight meet. I ended up running, I don't know, like I think it was like 151 or 152. I just kind of hung on to Mark Romero and Sammy Kippergat. Yeah, I think they were the guys that were in the race, and I just kind of hung on to them, man. I just stuck my nose in there, and I ended up running 151 for the 800, and all of a sudden, boom, it just lit up. I had all these options to where I could go to school, and there was a man by the name of Ambrose Sanchez that was just kind of somebody that really followed my career and gave me kind of a perspective. He came up to me one day and he says, "Where do you want to go to school?" And I said, UNM, maybe Highlands, that kind of thing. He says, "No, where do you want to go to school?" He says, "What's your dream school?" And growing up Catholic and Mexican Irish,
Yeah.
Notre Dame was always kind of up on a pedestal, and we'd watch Notre Dame football games and that. So I said Notre Dame. So he called Joe Piani, who was the coach of Notre Dame, and just told him about me and said, "This kid just ran, 151.8, and he's interested in going to Notre Dame." So then it kind of started, and Joe called me, we had conversations. And kind of an interesting side bit is when I went to visit Colorado, University of Colorado, I really liked it. I mean, I got to meet Rick Rojas. I met, Mary Decker. and all these
Wow.
people, and it just was just wonderful. I had such a wonderful time. Boulder's just gorgeous, and I remember my trip to Notre Dame was going to be that when I arrived back in Albuquerque. My trip to Notre Dame was going to be 2 hours later. So my mom met me with to change of clothes at the airport, and I told her, I should call Joe Piani and tell him I'm not going to go because, man, I really loved Colorado. It was just great. I think that's where I want to go to school. And she says, Hito, you've worked for it. Why don't you take the trip just to see what it's like? So sure enough, I did. And I went over there kind of with a bad attitude. It was just kind of like, I thought I'd figured out, what I wanted to do. And I remember getting to the airport, and somehow my flights had been there was a miscommunication, and nobody was there waiting for me, and I'm just like sitting there at the airport. And it was before the times when everybody had a cell phone, and eventually, Joe Piani comes to pick me up about an hour and a half later. So I'm like, what the heck? And but anyway, so I got on the campus, and that was another thing. In order to go to Notre Dame, I had my ACT test done, but they only accepted SAT. So if I was even going to be considered for acceptance, they had petitioned for me to take the SAT test when I was there. So
Oh,
on
wow.
Sunday morning, I had to go take a 4-hour SAT test sitting there in this little room. And the reason I remember it was Sunday morning is because I'm there sitting there taking the test, and all of a sudden the bells from the cathedral started going off, and I'm sitting there trying to concentrate, and the bells are ringing, they're playing all kinds of stuff. Anyway, and I had to there was a minimum that I had to get. I had to get I think it was like 1150 or something like that. And I think I got like 1151, just enough to get in. And, but what happened to me when I was on campus, I just loved it. I mean, it was just like, there was a sense that this is where I should be. I mean, their track, when I went to visit their track, they had a cinder track still. Their indoor facility was terrible. The weather in South Bend is terrible. All that stuff, and I knew about all that stuff, and I considered it, but there was just this overwhelming feeling that this is where I'm supposed to be, and I decided that that's where I was going to go to school, and it was really a decision that I made, that didn't, the data otherwise wouldn't have computed to Notre Dame, taking in all the information that I had, but it just was a feeling of complacency in the fact that I really felt good there. So, and it worked out great for me.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
You went on to have a pretty good career there. Again, like I mentioned in the intro, the first Notre Dame man and New Mexican to break 4 minutes in the mile. Um, how long was that something? Was that a goal that you had in mind as breaking four,
It was
or
almost
did?
it was a fluke. It was a fluke, is what it was. See, because I was still an 800-meter runner, and I kind of saw myself as an 800-meter runner, not as a miler. I did run cross country for Notre Dame, and I made the top seven, and I ran, as a freshman through senior. So I guess the potential was there to be a miler. But the first time we were at some meet and we needed points, and Piani says, "I'm going to put you in the mile just to for the points, because it was after the 800, and I'd already run the 800, and I ended up running 404, and he was like, "Whoa, you ran 404 just like whatever, just jumping in it." So then, he kind of decided that, next time we're going to run you in the mile fresh and see what happens. And so I ran against, in Illinois, I remember with John Gregoric, and I ended up running 3:59.98, so the second time I ran the mile,
Wow.
and so it was really, kind of a fluke. I mean, that I became a miler. So, anyway, so all of a sudden I run this fast, and it was really, it's kind of a side bit. It was really, really, really fun when we took a bus to Illinois. When we got back kind of late, and on the dorm rooms, somebody had or some of my friends had gotten a sheet and rode Chuck Aragon, 351 mile, Notre Dame, and it was hanging from the outside of the dorm. So it was really cool. So it became, who I was. I was Chuck Aragon, the miler. And so that, and then after that, I ended up, running a few more and running the 1500, and that's kind of how it became. And I really didn't look back after the 800. I ended up, I think in college I was a 149 guy. It really couldn't get past that. But and then the mile, I saw so much more potential for myself. So I think that's how that happened.
That's that is yeah, quite some latent talent there. You mentioned at the beginning that Notre Dame still had the cinder track, and it always amazes me kind of the different surfaces that people got to run in that transition, kind of from cinder into all weather and stuff. Did you? I mean, obviously, at a certain point, you just had to run on cinder. But did you enjoy the cinder tracks? Were you excited when you got to go on those all-weather tracks?
Oh yeah, I mean, Los Lunas when I was there had a cinder track, so that's really what I grew up running on. And um, when we got to go to Albuquerque and run, at the academy or somewhere we had a nice all-weather track, it was great. And I think there is something to it. I mean, the technology that has gone into, from cinder tracks to the new Mondos, the new, really fancy tracks, and then you can even take the shoes, the new Nike shoes. The technology that's come into play has made things, I don't say easier, but I think there's an advantage. I think with that being said, when you think about what Jim Ryan did as a high schooler on cinder tracks, I mean, to me, that's phenomenal. It's just, but there definitely is some advantages to the new technology that's coming to play into our sport. So
Yeah,
yeah, sure,
absolutely.
we look forward to running it. Everybody wants to run faster, and if those kind of things help, yeah, for sure.
Right,
So
right. And I mean, I think a lot of this stuff, to extent is saving legs, and so we see these people with longer careers, which is nice as well.
yeah,
Um, but it just yeah, just kind of that transition. My dad talks, when he was younger and running on the cinder tracks, and it just, or even the old plank indoor tracks. It just
yeah.
something about it. Just from those stories, I'm always so interested about them.
Well, obviously the board tracks that we used to run on indoors, they were 160. They were 10 laps to a mile. So that made them. I mean, they were fun to run on. I mean, it was like you'd get ripped around that curve and out the back. And it was fun. The tracks now, they have a better surface than the plywood, and they're a little bigger. They're 220 instead of 160 with the banks. So that makes them a little faster, but. Yeah, it was fun running on those. The Teen Coliseum used to have a great little track, and it was always fun to run on it. Just you'd be running along, and all of a sudden you hit a loose board though, and you almost lose it. So it had its challenges, but obviously we did what we had to do, and we enjoyed every opportunity we had to run on
Yeah,
indoors or any kind of surface.
that's great. Um, you talked about really feeling Notre Dame was the place for you. You went there after feeling like Colorado was going to be it, and you ended up at Notre Dame. What was that like? Obviously, you had the Catholic connection that you talked about, but what was that like as a Hispanic man from small town Los Lunas, going into this Midwestern area?
Yeah. And that's a good question, Seven. And I've always thought of that. I think it was part of the appeal, though. It was like outside of my comfort zone, and it presented to me a challenge. It kind of, who am I, and what's inside me, and can I compete at this level? Not just athletically, but academically, socially. I mean, everything that surrounds it. I remember one of the first times I was there, people would kind of tease me a little bit about my accent, and I never realized I had an accent, and it was this kind of stuff. So it was interesting to me and kind of, taking all that information in, and still being, who I am. I mean, I'm Chuck Aragon I'm from New Mexico, and yeah, I might have an accent, and but this is who I am, and this is who I represent, and it was always, I saw it as a great opportunity to educate people, and but for me, it was really uh, a challenge academically. I mean, my first year was horrible. I mean, it was everything I could do to, to hang in there, and um, I just wasn't as prepared as kids that had gone to boarding schools or whatever else. And but one of the things that I'm most proud of in my life is that I started at that level, and I ended up, graduating with a GPA that was good enough to get into medical school, and I think that it showed, at least showed myself that, yeah, I can compete and I can adapt to what's in front of me. And but yeah, it was a challenge in, both in all those different degrees, athletically, academically, and socially. But it ended up being a blessing, and it's something that I was able to rise to the occasion. I feel very proud of it.
That's great. And again, it's obviously worked out. You ended up with a great GPA. You talked about getting
Not great, but good, good
good,
enough.
good enough, good enough. There you go. A good enough GPA to get into
Yeah,
medical
yeah,
school.
yeah. Great would be an overstatement.
um, what made you decide that medicine was something that you wanted to go into?
That's a good question too. You know, I thought I wanted to be a dentist when I left Los Lunas High School. I had done a little kind of exploratory thing. It was through the Boy Scouts where I was paired up with a dentist and kind of enjoyed just the patient interaction with him. But then when I got to college and started taking physiology classes, I really felt like uh, the dental thing was not going to be enough for me. I really wanted to explore more the education that would involve, the more physiology and more anatomy and more pharmacology. And so that's kind of set my sights on, and just felt like, again, it was one of those things that, I don't know that I started out saying I want to be a doctor. It was more, I just followed my passion in regards to, what I was being taught in school. Those were the classes that I really found interesting, and that's what I enjoyed. And frankly, that's what I did best at. Was that those types of classes. And because of that, I decided that, yeah, I'm going to try to go to medical school. And I applied to different medical schools, but I really wanted to come home to UNM, and I tried to make, get relationships with people that were at UNM and figure out, what I needed to do. And I was just blessed by being able to get accepted at UNM, and coming back, and going to medical school here was a dream.
That's amazing. And I get, how did you make that decision? Going through medical school, which is not the easiest thing you can do, and still wanting to try to compete at a high level. Was that a decision you made like early on, or was that something that came, after you
Yeah,
already
yeah,
got into
yeah.
medical?
It's not anything that I even really thought, okay, it's either one or the other. I mean, I really felt like, I mean, Notre Dame was tough, and running there was tough. So I figured, you know what, I, it wasn't like a transition for me to. I mean, to be honest with you, for me, uh, probably Notre Dame was as tough or tougher than medical school. Because I was coming from a place where, I really had to put a lot of time and energy and effort into, what I was doing there. So I felt like I was capable of doing both. And then, I joined the Athletics West track and field team, which I don't know if you're familiar with it, probably before your time, but maybe you, because of your interest, you might know. But they were an organization. It's kind of like the Bowerman team now. They were the Bowerman of yesteryear, and they initially wanted me to move to Oregon. I says, you know what, that's a I'm going to be in Albuquerque because I'm going to med school, and this is where I'm going to be. And I got a good coach. I got great guys to work out with. I got Peter Koich. I got Sam Kowski. I got you know all these guys that are here um, to work out with. And so they thought about it and they decided, okay, that's fine. And then when it came to negotiating my contract, um, instead of taking a higher salary, I somehow we worked it out where they'd pay for my medical school. So Nike, covered my medical school. I don't know. I know
Wow.
that's. I guess that's legal. I don't know, but they did, and so anyway, that was wonderful. And then and their obligations, my obligations to them, were mostly in the summer. I mean, I would go run some indoor meets, but it was a matter of Nike being very flexible with me, and then the medical school being really flexible with me. I mean, it took me 5.5 years to get through those 4 years of medical school, but they were letting me take off in the summer to go race in Europe or go to the national championships and do all this stuff. So I just would have to because medical school is in blocks and there was the dean at the time was Diane Klepper, and she was really, really helped me in being able to navigate, both things in my life, and I'm indebted to her for her ability to see that both of these things were good and that I should be allowed to do them both. So that was great.
That is
So as you
fantastic.
see, there are a lot of people that this isn't the Chuck Aragon story, man. There was a lot of people that helped me get to where I needed to get to, and then I think that's how life is, though.
No, I think you're right. It's never it's usually not just one person doing everything. There's other people around them,
Yeah,
and you've mentioned many of the people, and that's amazing that one that Nike was that flexible with you to be able to sponsor you through finishing school, and that the school was flexible with you. It's not something you hear a lot of nowadays with some of this stuff, and so it's yeah, I wish we'd hear more of that, because that's we get I think we get better athletes out of that, because you're able to become your full person, and pursue both your passions, which is fantastic.
yeah. I feel very fortunate, especially as I see the scenario now. I mean, it seems like kids either do one or the other. It's hard for them to kind of mix the two. Both because of sponsor responsibilities and really what they feel their obligations are too. So yeah, I was very fortunate.
Yeah, I think one of the ones I've heard about recently is I think his name is Marty Hare or something. He's a marathoner who's run pretty fast, sub 2:10, and is doing medical school and everything. But there's not many.
You know what though? It's very very doable. I mean, it's you just have to have people around you that understand it for one and understand what you're trying to do. For me, uh, it was like the 2 or 3 hours that I would spend working out. I mean, there's no way I could have spent studying because you just need to take a break. And as opposed to going and throwing a frisbee around or doing whatever, I'd go to the track and I'd meet Abraham Hussein and Peter Koech, and we'd go knock off 10 quarters or whatever the workout was. And to me, that was mind clearing and was enabling me to do even the medical school better by doing that kind of structured exercise. So it's definitely doable, and it's not anything that's unique to me or unique to the time, but it's definitely doable.
Right, and it's hearing you talk about it, that's often a common theme is running, no matter what level you're doing a workout or you're just going out for a 3 mile jog. It's that clearing nature of it, that kind of decompressing. Again, whether you're doing something hard or easy, it lets you kind of take your mind away from everything else.
Yeah. No, and we had a good group. There we had Maurice Smith and Richie Martinez lots of names that you probably are familiar with. That we had a great group that we'd all meet and we'd work out hard for for whatever it was, 2 hours or whatever it was, and I'd go back to the library and and go study. And we were fortunate enough to have Mike Mittelstaedt as our coach, and he was the guy that was kind of kept it all together for us, um, and he was the one that was always telling us that you could do this, and this is it's well within your reach, and he was made us believe in ourselves, and that's all of us. That was if I was ever a coach, that's how I would imitate my style. Would be like Mike. Mike was a very positive individual that made you believe things, even if the facts were such that you shouldn't. He would make you believe them, that you could run fast, and eventually you'd grow into it. Eventually you'd grow into what you believed. So that was great.
Yeah, I've mentioned, my dad was a runner, and he, had some interactions with Mike. And so I've heard, different stories from various people. And, you know, he recently passed away, and his, the piece in the paper with quotes from so many of his athletes, it was just, it spoke a lot about the type of person that he was.
Well, if anybody's interested, we did put together a website that kind of pays tribute to Mike and the kind of coach he was, and some of those eulogies that you're talking about are in there, and some other information that people might want to know about Mike. In addition, we created a scholarship that it's a small scholarship now, but we've actually had it for 2 years. We gave last year was let's see, Vanessa Dominguez from Pecos, and then Juan Branch here in Albuquerque with the recipients. And this year, Gilbert Valdez and Josette Goodlet were the recipients. And all these kids kind of exemplified, the kind of kids that I think Mike was drawn to. Kids with potential, with raw potential, that were good kids, civil, good kids that contributed to the community, and kids that he saw potential in. I mean, that's how I feel. He saw potential in me, and these are kids that I think Mike would have seen potential in. And that's what the scholarship's about. It's about giving people opportunities and trying to search and evaluate their potential and be able to accomplish things that they didn't think they could. If anybody's interested in the website, it's easy. It's coachmikem.com. coachmikem.com. And again, it talks a little bit about the scholarship that a lot of us have put together. It's really just kind of a grassroots type of thing that generated from people that knew and loved Mike and really wanted to contribute to sustaining his memory. It's presented at the state track meet every year, and there's a little write-up in the brochure at the state meet. And my goal is to keep Mike Mittelstadt's name associated with high school track and field in New Mexico for as long as I can, and that's what this scholarship is about. So,
well, that's great. I think it's great to honor his memory, and two, I think the more opportunities that we have for our kids here in New Mexico to know that their hard work and what they're doing is paying off, and that people are noticing it. Any opportunity we can have to help out those kids is fantastic.
yeah, well, great, and that's really what this is about. This scholarship.
Oh, awesome. And again, anybody who's interested, it's coachmikem.com. There'll be a link in the show notes to this episode. So if you want to check it out, easy, click on it, type it in, whatever you want to do. So, you talked about, working with Mike and, doing the medical school and everything. You had some pretty good, years during that time. I think you were third at the '83 Pan Am Games in the 1500. and then went on to the Olympic trials there in '84.
Oh,
What
Seb,
were
I was
the
hoping you weren't going to bring that up. Yeah, that was pretty disappointing, that getting fourth in the Olympic trials, but by 500 of a second. So it's kind of
Yeah,
like it's become my legacy, I'm afraid. I mean, of all the good races I ran, and not that that wasn't a good race, but truly is. What I'm known for is the guy that got fourth in the 1984 Olympic trials by 500 of a second. But uh, yeah, so
it's hard because there's so many people when you say being fourth in Olympic trials, like, oh yeah, I take that in a heartbeat. But at the same time, like, knowing that you're that close, and I mean, they always say, right, fourth's the worst, the worst place to get because you're so close, and especially in a race like that. But I mean, I can't imagine what that would feel like.
yeah, I know. I mean, it was tough, and but it was interesting. I'll tell a little side story here. When I was walking off the track, I was pretty broken up about not making the Olympic team, and I'm walking, and I'm got tears in my eyes, and one of the officials came up to me and said, "It's beautiful," and I says, "What?" She said, "It's beautiful that you wanted it so badly that it hurts you so badly." And I didn't really understand it then. I thought the lady was nuts, But as years have gone by, and I sit here, as a 63-year-old man, it really was beautiful to have something in my life that that really could hurt that badly, that I was so committed to. And I don't know that everybody gets that opportunity, and so yeah, it was beautiful, and now I not that it doesn't, when I talk about it, it's not that I feel like it doesn't hurt, in regards to not making the team, but I've come to accept the positives that it's instilled in me in my life. So all good here.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's for many people, those disappointments help push them on, and continue. And obviously, that wasn't the end of your career. You continued running for, I believe, 3 more years. I think
Yeah.
'87 was your last race.
I ended up making the world championship team that went to
Okay.
Rome, so that was great. So that was kind of, a little bit of satisfaction from not making the Olympic team. So that was good. But yeah, at the end of the day, I had a great career. It was wonderful to be able to find out what was inside me and get the opportunity to race at the level that I did. So it was all positive, and there's really no negative to my career.
What is that decision like when when you decided to step away from it?
Well, it was. I kind of got to the point where I needed to do something because I was done with medical school. I needed to start a residency, and I thought, okay, 88 was going to be it. I mean, if I was going to be in my mind, that's what it was going to be, and it wasn't like uh, I did it one day, decided that I was going to step away. It was part of the plan that in 88, I was going to sustain myself till 88 and then start my internship. Uh, and and I remember my first day of internship. Here I was, Chuck Aragon 351 mile or whatever, this and that. And I remember the first day, somebody asked me about it, and then that was it. That was the last time we talked about it. And from then on, I was just the lowest form of life in the hospital, an intern. I was just, I was, I was just another intern, and all that stuff was, they don't really, they don't really care how fast you ran. It's just whether you can do this H&P and whether you can take care of this and whether you can, do the scut that needs to be done that an intern does, and whether you're going to show up and whether you're going to, that's, and to me, that was probably the best thing. That's the best way that it could have occurred, as opposed to kind of hanging on or doing this or that. It just was one day I realized that, okay, that part of my life is over. And now here I am. I'm at the bottom of the ladder trying to make my way back up, to in this field, in this scenario, because it really was that. I mean, no, those guys, nobody cared. It was about, okay, how helpful are you going to be to me taking care of these patients? And it's good. It worked out.
Where did you do your residency?
My residency, I did my first year. My internship was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, with Michigan State University. So I did a year there. That was my internship, and then I did a residency in anesthesia at the University of Vermont.
Okay.
Um,
So, so is that your specialty, anesthesia?
I'm an anesthesiologist. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's cool. And how'd you end up in Montana? Because
That's a
that's
good question. I really wanted, my wife and I, we wanted to go back to Albuquerque, and really wanted to work at Presbyterian Hospital. That was kind of, I was a ORA at Presbyterian during the summers when I'd come home from college. I'd work as I'm really an ORA. What they do is they transport patients, and they um, mop the floors at between surgeries and that sort of thing. And there was another kid by the name of Scott Johnson who was in medical school with me as well. That ended up we were doing the same thing, and he ended up becoming a cardiac heart surgeon. And Scott Johnson, I think his brother was the governor at one time. But anyhow, so I thought that's where I really wanted to go back to and work as an anesthesiologist. So I came back and interviewed, and uh, they said, well, we don't have a job right now, but we want you, and as soon as the job comes up, we'll take you. And I'm like, I got like $300 in my bank account. I mean, it's like I need a job. I need to do something. I mean, I had a 6-month-old Alexa and $300 in my bank account. So I needed to take a job. So this job in Billings was here, and my wife Kathy and we had traveled through Montana, and we liked it. It was beautiful. So I came up here and interviewed, and I got the job. And so we made the transition, came up here, and it couldn't have been more than 4 months later. A Presbyterian calls me and says, "Hey, Chuck, we got an opening. We got a spot for you." And I'm like, so Kathy and I had a kind of heart to heart, and we said, we're here. Why don't let's just do this. In 3 years, we'll decide. Let's at least stay here, a couple or 3 years, and then figure out what we're going to do next. Because we liked it. The job was good. Billings ended up being a great place to raise our children. And so it's been a good transition for us. But that's how it happened. I mean, really, our intent was to go back, and I was work at Presbyterian and live happily ever after, but it didn't happen. And so we made the best of where we're at, and we miss New Mexico, terribly, and we love going back, and we love our friends there and family there. But for Kathy and I and our 3 daughters, this has been a great place to be, and we've made great friends, and our life here is pretty simple. I live about a half mile from the hospital. I ride my bike or run to work in the morning, and it's very simple. The grade schools that the kids went to were a quarter mile down the road, so it offered us simplicity. And it's a smaller town in Montana. I'm a fly fisherman. It's all very accessible, so that's really what kept us here. But we love New Mexico, and we probably will eventually have a place in New Mexico, and probably still have a place in Montana too, though. But we'll see. We'll see. That's all you have to do. It all depends on where the daughters end up and where the grandkids are. I guess that's kind of part of the deal.
Well, that makes sense. That's how I think a lot of people kind of work things
Yeah.
as they get older.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your daughters a little bit, because I believe they all ran.
Yeah. Let's talk about them. That's my favorite subject.
How, did you ever push them into running? Did they come into it on their own? Was there a little bit of encouragement? How did that work out? And were you just excited that they got into it?
You know, I think that what got them into it is seeing Kathy and myself running, particularly my wife Kathy. She was, always doing training for fun runs and races around here. In fact, she even qualified for the Olympic trials marathon at 44 years of age.
Oh, wow.
So and I know people will know Kathy Aragon is really Kathy Pfeiffer
Right.
from New Mexico, and so it was probably more her influence. You know, I have pictures of them running in a baby jogger. Could barely hold their heads up, and they're bouncing down the road with my wife pushing them, and so it was always around them. It was always and then when we really didn't push them and in the sense that going to Hershey meet or age group meets, and that was probably more my wife's influence. She realized that what, it doesn't really matter if you run the Hershey race or and when they got into in junior high, they started racing and running, and again we didn't push them in the summers. They just did what they did, and then when they got to high school, it was a little more competitive, a little more serious, and then that's when kind of their own goals took over. When they started seeing themselves that they could have some success, kind of like my scenario, where it basically, you start understanding that you're pretty good at something, and that makes you not only happy, but gives you an ability to maybe do something more with the sport. So that's how really it and then once Alexa did it, Danny saw her and followed her, and then once Christina. I don't think Christina was a very good gymnast. She was a level 10 gymnast,
Oh,
and
wow.
she did that as well as track and field and cross country. But I think she always kind of knew that really her aptitudes lied in running, and she ended up running one of the fastest 1600s in the nation, and I think she's ranked like fifth or fourth or fifth overall of all time. So she really excelled at the sport, and but they all were able to go to school and go to college on track and field scholarships, and I think they would all attest to having a really wonderful experience. Two of them at Notre Dame, and then the black sheep went to Stanford. So it was obviously it came down to Stanford or Stanford, Oregon, or Notre Dame, and she was really struggling with it, and I remember telling her one day, I said, there are a lot of things in this world that you consider other people. This isn't one of them. This is a decision that you need to make on your own. It doesn't matter that I went there or your sisters went there. It's wherever you want to go. And so Stanford has been a great decision for her. In fact, I even have a Stanford hat on right now. But it's been a great place for her. She finished up her career this year and was third at the NCAA's. And this weekend, which will be fun, both Danny and Christina have qualified for the USATFs, and they'll both be in the field. So there's a chance that both Aragon girls will be running against each other in one of the prelims and hopefully the finals. So tune in.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew that Danny had qualified, and I guess I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Christina has as well.
That's great. That's got to feel really good.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And even if she did go to Stanford instead of Notre
Yeah,
Dame.
exactly.
Well, and speaking of that, you have, if anybody follows you on Instagram, you've kind of taken on this other, I don't know if it's a side gig or whatever, but you're out there, you're taking pictures not only of your girls, but of the teams that they've represented, and sharing those. And it's really kind of cool to see and get this, other perspective of not just like, a photographer who's out there, but you're out there actually being able to capture your daughters as well. What is that like? How did you get into photography?
Well, again, it started probably when they were in junior high. I mean, I went out and bought a camera and took pictures of them. I mean, I can count on one hand the number of pictures that I have of myself running, but it was a different time, obviously. But so, I picked up a camera, started taking pictures. Me and another dad that had his daughter running, and we kind of, got into it. And then as they progressed through high school, and I did a little more, and then as they went to college, I mean, I felt like it was a way to be around the sport and around my daughters, and as now we even go to meets where my daughters aren't running or scenarios where they're not involved, and I enjoy taking the pictures from a standpoint of a love for the sport and being around it, and a way of giving back, a way of promoting the sport. People appreciate pictures of their kids, and people appreciate pictures of track and field. So I've kind of grown to this point where it's obviously not a business for me, but it's a really strong hobby that allows me to continue to be associated with the sport and give something back. And really, that's what my photography has been at this point. So hopefully
that's
it'll continue to grow, and hopefully I'll get better at it. And it's fun. It's fun doing something that you can see yourself progress and grow. And there's a lot of great mentors out there that are helping me, and there's some great sports photography people out there that I kind of hang around with and try to learn from, and it's a fun activity for me.
You kind of talk about it almost in the same way of the people that helped you with your running.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a guy that needs a lot of help. Let's just say that right off the bat. Full transparency. I haven't done anything by myself. So.
When your daughters were in high school, were you just dad, or were you Chuck Aragon, the 351 miler? How did how did the coaches look at you?
I hadn't really ever thought of that. I think people were aware that I was, both my wife and I had, some knowledge and some expertise that it came to running, and we were. I think coaches were, some of them were looked at that as a positive, some of them looked at it as a negative. I think in the sense that, we really tried not to influence anybody, or if somebody asked for my opinion, I would give it, but it wasn't that we led with our opinions, both my wife and I. And there were, parents that would ask us about, training and this and that. And we would offer it, our opinion, but again, it was in the background and not up front. When my kids, they had coaches, and if their coaches asked me what I thought, I would give them, my opinion of what the kids needed, and how their training might be optimized. And because the high school season is so weird, because it's especially up here. I mean, it doesn't, the snow doesn't leave till March or April, and then May's state track meet, so it's like really short, so you got to get a lot done in a very short period of time. And so it made it difficult, but no, I don't know. I don't think it was a big factor, so.
That's awesome. It's, just always curious with people, who ran very well, and then, their kids are going through, but obviously it sounds like you handled it well, whichever the situation was. I know when Danny, I had her on the podcast last summer, and, she always expressed that it was a good situation for her. So, I mean, it sounds like it overall worked out. So that's awesome.
Well, I got to admit that when we would sit at dinner tables, one of the subjects that my favorite subject at dinner was running, and talking a little bit about,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was their favorite and topic, but discussing races and training and this and that, and giving my opinion to them about what they could have done or should have done or whatever. But my wife would kind of kick me under the table, and and that would curtail, But so hopefully I wasn't too much of a nuisance to them. But I mean, they all called me at Father's Day, so maybe that's yesterday. So that's probably, I think they still like me.
There you go. So are you gonna be there at uh, the trials then?
Oh yeah. Kathy and I are
Championship.
leaving on Wednesday. Yeah, we're gonna go Wednesday, so we'll be there and see how it goes. You know.
Awesome. Well, that's good. Obviously, best of luck to the girls, and glad that you're going to be out there, and you and your Kathy are able to make that trip and be a part of that with them.
Well, I'll tell you, I always tell people it's our one extravagance. I mean, we'll fly clear across the country to watch our kids run for 4 minutes or 2 minutes, but if it's less time, we're even happier. So, so we do enjoy the sport. We enjoy the sport and watching our kids. So two of our favorite things. So
One thing I was going to ask you, and you touched on this a little bit, was how much is running still a part of your life? Obviously, you're there for your daughters. You're there taking pictures and involved that way. You talked about running to work at times. So, what does running mean to you, now?
well, I think I probably get most of my exercise by riding my bicycle now. It seems like it's a lot easier on me to go out, and my wife and I actually yesterday rode for 4 hours on the Continental Divide Trail,
Wow.
climbed like 3,000 feet elevation, and I told her it was the worst Father's Day I'd ever had because it was so hard. But anyway, so I got to keep in shape to stay to be able to hang with my wife. So that's what it's become. It's becomes a way to stay in shape to be able to enjoy my company with my wife. And but otherwise, I'm a fan. I'll always be a fan. It's been wonderful. It's been a great sport. It's been very generous to our family in the sense of accomplishments and memories and friendships. So
That's great. I mean, I can tell, in the way you're talking about it, just the connections and all the people that you're able to point to that, it's more than just helping you along the way. I mean, you become close with these people you're running with every
yeah,
day. I think every runner knows that feeling.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
this I really appreciate your time. Thanks again for making this work. Um, yeah, I have one more question. It's kind of how I end the podcast, and that's just what do you listen to kind of get you going, get you motivated, whether it's for your long bike rides or maybe it was for a workout, 40 years ago.
What do I listen to?
Yeah.
Uh, let's see. I mean, if I'm out gardening, I like classical music because it's relaxing. If I'm going to go out and get on my bike and if I was going to listen to music, um, I might put on. I don't know. I do like country music, and that's probably what I would listen to. Just um, good old country music and classical music when I'm gardening. So,
Nice. Nice. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate your time. Um, who knows? At some point, I might have all the Autogons on. Talk to everybody. Get Christina. Get Kathy.
it would be interesting to see if the stories are the same
Yeah.
or what the perspectives were on. Yeah,
There you go.
maybe my the way I view things would be different, but still the way. That's one of the things that when you get older, you kind of forget really the realities of things. But all
uh,
right. Well, listen, I appreciate your interest and I appreciate the fact that you're continuing um, to make our sport better and to get more people interested and involved. And I think it takes things like this that you're doing, Seb, to to create interest. And it's you're doing a great service to all of us as runners and particularly New Mexico runners.
I'd once again like to thank my guest for their time, and thank you for tuning in. If you have the opportunity, please rate and review wherever you listen to your podcasts, or just help spread the word. Music was provided by Philip Friedman. You can follow him on SoundCloud at DJ Teach. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at RunningNM. Feel free to drop me a line or shoot me an email at runningnewmexico@gmail.com if you have any questions or know of someone who should be interviewed. In the meantime, keep running, New Mexico.